Grant, this is your team. Congratulations. The expectations for Chelsea are probably different than we've had every year since doing the pod. And we've gone through the same up and down that we talked about with United, but now we get to do it with a team from London.
Peaks and valleys.
Peaks and valleys. More like peaks and... I don't know. I got nothing. Sorry. Apologies. Anyways, let's move on to the expectations for Chelsea. Let's start with the league finish. Obviously, last season finished in 7th.
I meant lower.
In
the table.
Not what. So what did
It was
you guys finished 10th? Missed out on
Everything.
So the expectation is obviously to do better. But what is the definition of better for Chelsea?
Champions League spot. I hate to sound redundant, but I think that's a bare minimum. I think relative to, again, the rest of the big six, the teams that have finished higher, they've gotten most of, if not all of the required business done. Everything else at this point would just be a bonus. I still think the main priority, and again, we're recording this ahead, is just the whole center back situation. But even with bringing in Lacroix, that alone raises the floor in that group of center backs so much. I think especially with how much we talked about the 1 game a week impact on United last year, naturally with just 40 games going out of the cups early, I don't necessarily see that happening with us, but Champions League's a must. I don't see a world where it's excusable to miss out. Obviously, there's a million different things that can happen. There can be long-term injuries, things that really change the trajectory, but I think as things stand, you should absolutely expect to finish in the Champions League.
Yeah, team's too deep, has too much money put into it, and currently running a manager who was just managing Real Madrid. Just like it was for United last season, it's Champions League or bust. It was such a failure of a season last year that if you're going to right the ship, it has to be with Champions League. And also, we talked about just the lack of knowing what the top 6 looks like. We know that Newcastle is probably not going to be very good, right? But they're also a team that's only going to have not going to have Champions League and only be playing once a week. And so, if you're competing with the likes of them, you'd like to think that you leapfrog them. And same goes for Spurs, right? So I guess the expectation from my perspective is if we're putting 2 teams up against each other, like not only do you guys have to finish in Champions League, but even if Spurs is in and around that too, you have to finish above Spurs. I think in terms of where the 2 projects are, manager coming in, like De Zerbi's obviously had a little more time, but spent a ton of money. Both teams spent a ton of money, and so in terms of just the rivalry itself, like if you guys finished behind Spurs next season, it would be considered an utter failure, even if it was Champions League, right?
I mean, if they're 3 and 4, then I don't know if that's a big thing, but that's also so far fetched. Anything is possible. When I don't know, I've learned more to not get excited by Spurs, but I think with them, like, yeah, it should be Champions League. More so though, for me, is like outside of league finish, it's the platform. This has been something with Chelsea. You have these young guys that you were trying to build like a core with. Now you've evened out the squad a little bit. So these guys should be capable of at least getting Champions League. Xabi Alonso had a invincible season with Leverkusen. He's used to being in Champions League competition. And so I'm sure his expectation is Champions League at least next season.
I think a point you were just making, Dylan, with the teams in a similar situation, you mentioned Tottenham. I think another thing you can look at is a lot of those teams that overachieved last year,
Right.
the ones that did qualify for Europe. Yes, they're going to strengthen their squad, like, the Sunderlands of the world. I believe Brighton, did they qualify for Europe?
Yeah.
I think they did. They're going to be stretched very thin now. I still think in the lesser UEFA competitions, they're going to be favorites to get out of the league phase. They're going to get the bye to the round of 16, but that's still something that those types of clubs aren't usually built for. They're not built to have European games midweek, so that's going to be an adjustment period for those teams as well. I think with the amount of preseason games we've had, including behind closed doors, I absolutely think unless everything goes to complete shit and every factor outside of our control goes wrong, they should finish in a Champions League spot.
Yeah, it is a must. I think we can all unanimously agree in terms of the goals for Chelsea. Like, that's one of them is just Champions
Where
League.
were we last year? You guys had them in second. I had them in third.
Yeah.
So that was
And
more of
you
a
guys were-
projection based on the small sample that we got towards the end of last season, and then in that Club World Cup in the summer. It was like, yeah, there's enough. They can make a run. They can be in and around the title conversation until 2/3 through the season maybe, but still be respectable and competitive with those teams at the very top. And it went to shit very quickly.
Yep.
I vividly remember as soon as it hit December, we play Leeds. That was a disaster, and I said, "Don't panic." And it's like a
it
house of
unraveled.
cards. One
Yeah.
card goes down, the whole thing. So I think we've addressed those holes in the squad, and when that guy in the locker room is, Tosin, and now it's, guys like Jordan Henderson, Danny Welbeck, guys that have been in and around teams that gone up, gone down. They've seen so many different types of teams, like even just Danny Welbeck, right? Man United, Arsenal, and then Watford and Brighton. Like the amount of experience that he has, he's seen high performing teams in the championship.
Right.
He's seen overachieving teams in the Premier League, underachieving teams. Like, these guys can help the younger players keep level heads, and those intangibles that we've talked about for so long with Chelsea, I think those are being addressed. So they're hard to really quantify until we actually see games and we see that impact. But I am optimistic that we're covering certain holes in the squad. We're starting to address these things, and over time, we'll get there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I want to say that the model isn't built to miss Champions League 2 seasons in a row, but then again, it's Chelsea and you guys are going to spend money, so maybe not. But I think that all of our points is like, if that doesn't happen, then
They need the extra money also.
Yeah, it'd be
they're
helpful.
unable to sell their academy products. Chelsea need to focus on Champions League to bring in a bit of extra cash because they're not going to be able to sell their youth players and Grant was saying 2 windows.
I think it's just to register new ones.
Ah.
I still think we can sell.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's revenue streams that have gone dry as a result of finishing in 10th, not having a sponsor, whatever you want to say. You can't afford to have a similar season as last season when it comes to the Premier League. And even still, with as bad as we were towards the back half of that season, we were in contention for European football up until the last kick of our season. So yeah, that at minimum, we need to qualify for the Champions League.
So then where does that leave you guys in the cup competitions? Obviously, we said that United and Chelsea have essentially flip-flopped spots. I think that people wanted to see United go further, but at the end of the day, UCL kind of papered over the crack. Is the expectation to go as far as you guys did last year in the competitions, which was a semi-final in both?
Semi-final in the Carabao Cup, and then the final in the FA
Oh, that's
Cup.
right. You guys did go to the final.
Yep. And uninspiring performances in our exits both times. And I think in recent history at Wembley, it's been very disappointing in cup finals for Chelsea. Whether you want to go back to the 2 losses and penalties to Liverpool, the loss to Liverpool's B team under Pochettino, Man City final last year, uninspiring. I mean, it's been awful at Wembley. So I think maybe the reason why so many Chelsea fans were excited about that Club World Cup is we finally won a final. In recent history, it's been so bleak in cup finals. So it felt like we potentially got over a hump. So I think to do something in one of the domestic cups would be big. We don't want to go out in the first round early because, yes, there's an advantage when it comes to the Premier League to not have to play other competitions. But with the new manager that's trying to implement ideas, and even when we trim down that fat, it's still going to be a bloated squad. There's got to be minutes. So I think to go far in Carabao Cup, to go far in the FA Cup would be beneficial for the team.
Yeah, I think you should be aiming to win at least one of those. Realistically, you're not challenging for a title this year. It's probably for the best that you don't have those hopes, because when we do put those hopes on Chelsea, they tend to they'll look like they're there for the beginning, but then it goes away. But yeah, I think you have to win, or at least try to win one of those, just to leave with some silverware this year, because that'll be a good building block to go off of, and it'll be a good start to Alonso's tenure as a Chelsea coach, rather than just not bringing home any silverware and securing Champions League, where it's like that's the bare minimum.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's tough to say that they have to win a trophy. It'd be nice. I think to your point about the squad in general, like if you don't have those minutes, if you're not winning or going far at least in those competitions, you guys have like 500 fucking players. So eventually that young core will get tired of not playing meaningful minutes. I mean, we already seen it with the likes of a Chempong not getting minutes, and if you don't have those cup competitions and he doesn't go out on loan, you start to lose the ties of those players, and eventually they will want to leave. It's you usually when you don't make Champions League, you cut your squad. And Chelsea, we already talked about, they signed like 8 dudes so far.
Before making the sales. I still think hopefully by the time this comes out there have been more departures, but
But even
what
the
do you
guys,
need? You need 16 currently
departures. Every time
to
they
trim
put
to
those
a
numbers out,
25-man
they
squad.
always
Yeah.
include academy players. That number, it's always bullshit. It's really stupid. But yes, it's still a big squad. I'd say at least like 5 minimum guys still need to leave. And like Dylan was saying, when you think of the Chelsea project, it's been young players, young players. Young players need minutes.
Well, what differentiates an academy player to a young player at Chelsea at this point?
No, like the 16, 17-year-old
No, of
players
course.
preseason.
But now
definitely
some of
not,
these
but-
guys, these academy guys, I feel like are becoming mainstays in the squad.
I think it's a wait and see situation on that front. There have been some players that have impressed so far in preseason, but I don't necessarily think just because of how many senior players are still in these positions, I don't necessarily see maybe some loans.
I see
for
a lot of
academy
loans
guys.
in your guys' future.
Yeah.
Even though you've offloaded a lot of the dead wood, it's going to be hard to get them all out this season, especially sales. So
Yeah.
maybe like loans with obligations or something. But
There's definitely going to be a few of those. There's already Garnacho. Hopefully by now, Badiashile is completed on that front too. So there's going to be a few of those. Sassy might be a loan to buy, but I also think loans for young players to just go get consistent minutes. I think the more you wait on that, the more you're taking a risk of it becoming a bad loan, like an Andre Santos at Nottingham Forest. He plays 2 games, has to get recalled. We have a history of doing that and really ruining young players' careers.
Yeah.
I mean, Datro Fofana, what's he been up to the past few years? You know what I mean? Like, that's just one example. So hopefully we stop being in the business of ruining young players' careers on 8-year contracts with no game time anywhere.
fair. It's Chelsea are always the most exciting team in the transfer window to talk about, just because of the absurd amount of stuff that goes on. And one of the most served one we've talked about in this whole thing has been Xabi coming in, and nobody thought that he was going to go to Chelsea. Everyone thought he was going to Liverpool. He then went to Chelsea. Liverpool then sacked their manager. Weird story, right? But now we have to go into the expectation of this is a manager that just managed Real Madrid and now is coming into a Chelsea project that is completely different in terms of standards and what they currently need. So what's the expectation for Xabi Alonso coming into this team?
well, I think you want to go back. We can go back and look at Leverkusen, and that's a group of unestablished guys that are coming into the limelight, and then you throw him in the lion's den that is Real Madrid, where it's all these established players and a lot of personality to deal with. And then now you look at Chelsea, and I think there's a little bit of both there. There's young players that need to make a name for themselves that he's going to be able to mold, but then there's also players that are established that I think he's brought in older people to help remedy some of those issues he had at Madrid to keep people's heads screwed on. So I think off the pitch, I think he's going to be good. He's kind of what Chelsea needed, someone that gets the game, someone well respected, and then someone that knows what they're going to need to do to win. And we've seen that he's a serial winner as long as the people buy in. So if he can get them to buy in, I think that's where it really all lies. And that's been a main issue for Chelsea, is either getting the people to buy in or the board to buy in. It seems like the board's bought in with him. They seem to be supporting him. Now, next step is to get the players to buy in. Someone like Xabi Alonso, who has such pedigree in the game, it already makes it easier. People respect him for what he did on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people also respect him for what he's done off the pitch as a manager.
Sure.
So we're just walking in already. He has life easier than most of the recent Chelsea managers. So I think expectation-wise, not looking at any like finishes in competitions, but just like what I expect from him as a coach, is just to instill this philosophy that he has in mind for Chelsea and to get them going in the right direction and build a platform that can't just be washed away within a month or two. Like the base of your house is what he needs to be building right now, and that's what Chelsea's been missing, because they'll build a foundation around that base, and that'll come crashing down. So until you build that base, I think there's no building the rest of the house for Chelsea. So
Yeah.
that my main expectation is that he does everything he can with the limited games he has and the personnel he has to make sure that they have a platform to stand on and continue to build onto the next seasons. But I'm not really expecting the world from him this season.
Yeah, before I throw it over to you for your expectations, maybe you can take it in a more tactical approach. For me personally, I think it's just a level of professionalism. That's the one expectation that I'm looking for him to bring in. It's the same thing that they brought him in for at Madrid, was to try to understand superstars, bring them all together, like you were saying, building that foundation and that base. But also, just for the Chelsea managers that we've seen over the last 2 years, and even Maresca, he's not faultless in some of the stuff that he did, right? When things went bad for Chelsea, everything went bad for Chelsea from a media perspective, from the way that everyone handled things. Even Maresca, in the way that he handled his exit, right, wasn't necessarily professional. And the one thing that Xavi has been known for is his professionalism. And even so fact that Madrid, who are known for slandering people, did not slander him when he left. And so I think just from a level of, got a lot of young characters, you got a young superstar in Palmer, like, can you corral them all in and just be a professional team week over week, where not the highs aren't too high and the lows aren't too lows? Very similar to that United concept last season. Can you just be smart enough and professional enough week in, week out, and see Chelsea become more, I guess legit is the word I'm going to use because I don't have a better one, but
It's basics. It's basics.
Mm-hmm.
9 red cards in 38 games. That's unacceptable, right?
Right.
So things like that need to be addressed. That should be a basic. But I think the most important thing, when he first was named as manager, we were like, oh, really? What does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? And I think we've seen what it means so far this summer. And he's clearly being backed, finally. And that is the most important thing. That's what gives me so much optimism going into this year. I thought it was a good step in the right direction to be able to get him in as the manager, but to actually act on it and to actually, like, that's how low my expectations are for our board. So the fact that he's being backed, I'm very optimistic. And then more so from a tactical perspective, I mean, we saw it at least in the preseason game today, which is the 8th of August against AC Milan. It was a 3-back today. Pedro Neto played wing back, suits him, and Palestra, he looked very good again today. And Xabi said something after the game about, that's not what's important. Our principles are what's important. That needs to be instilled, and then it goes from a picture to a movie. I would love for him to make movies this year. So I'm getting more and more optimistic, and I think with the guys he's been able to bring into the squad, like whether it's a Jordan Henderson, a Welbeck, the guys who are clearly there to level that locker room out and to bring experience. Then there's a guy like Palestra who came out of nowhere. Clearly, that was a Xabi targeted signing, and we're already seeing why, what he's able to do in and out of possession. So I'm not too hung up on, oh my goodness, we're going to be playing a 3-back. I'm going to lose my mind. I really don't think it's that important. And I think if we're able to get the right guys out and have that proper reset and get all that toxicity out, because that Rosignor era, I don't think it's fair to blame all on Rosignor. I don't think it's fair to blame everybody deserves a fair portion of blame, but it did get very toxic in that locker room.
Right.
All of that needs to go. That whole feeling, there needs to be that whole reset, because we're still missing guys, right? Our captain still hasn't returned from preseason, right? So we're not there yet. There still is work to be done, but I am optimistic so far based off what we've seen get done.
Agreed. So, talking broadly about Chelsea's goals, right? We kind of have highlighted them. It's UCL is probably the top bar, like a level, being professional week in, week out, and then a deep cup run in the 2 other competitions, right? Like that's
Get to Wembley.
If you get to those 3 things, it's an A+ season.
Again, it's a little too early because the window hasn't
Fair.
fully closed, but I think at a minimum we need to qualify for the Champions League. Once the transfer window shuts, then we can really set those expectations in stone. But as it stands, yeah, bare minimum, you need to be in the Champions League, and in my opinion, you should qualify comfortably.
Yeah, so I guess the last expectations piece that we can hit is just a player. And I think that there's an obvious player in this one, right? Like, I feel like there's an obvious player for me
Who's that,
in terms of
Dylan?
expectations. It's Ice Cold Palmer. He was, like, I'm going to say he was awful last season, right? And he was
For his
injured,
level,
and whatever those things are, for Chelsea to be a good team, Cole Palmer needs to be good because he's going to play all the available minutes. And if he's bad, then you're stunting the growth of a guy behind him potentially, right? Like Esteban is going to be in. You just brought Morgan Rogers in for 113 million pounds.
I
Like,
was gonna say, like, I think my expectations fall on the most expensive signing in Premier League history.
English.
English
But yeah.
Premier League signing.
is that actually? He's the most
He
expensive.
broke
passed
Anderson's record.
by
Yeah.
was it a
like
million?
literally like
It's like
Impressive
NFL running
stuff.
back stuff.
I guess that's fair. It really does fall on the two Ice Boys. For in terms of right, your guys' offense really dried up at a certain point under a senior, and you guys just weren't able to score goals, and you obviously were conceding, and that's a bigger problem too. But if those guys can't keep you in matches, and you're not scoring goals, and you're only playing once a week, that stuff continues. Like it's just such a a drag in your team. We even had this like when we played in JV, like when your strikers don't score goals, everyone starts to get mad. You start pointing fingers. You start screaming at the defense. The defense is a problem. Now the midfield is a problem. Everything becomes this giant clusterfuck. And so those two guys for me are the. I guess that's fair.
I think
I mean, I think I don't have expectations because I'm not a fan, but I
That's
think
fair.
Yao Pedro definitely has expectations going into this season.
What would be the expectation? Because I thought
15
that
goals in the Premier League.
I mean, I think
But he was playing every. This so it's such an interesting thing with the striker conversation because like I had the same thing for Mbumo and Cunha and Sesko, right? But they all chipped in with 10 goals last season, like just around that 10 to 12 goals, and that was way more than good enough.
I mean that's the thing too. If he's your primary goal scorer, then you're expecting a lot more out of him. He needs to be scoring at a high clip, and there's less games for them this season. So one of my main things for him is that in the bigger games he doesn't pop up. There's less
That's fair.
low intensity games, in my
Every game
opinion.
is a
Yeah,
high
every
intensity game.
game, especially when you're fighting for Champions League, like every game is a hard game. So in my eyes, I can see struggle coming there, but obviously it comes down to the player. And if he's gonna go out and score at a high clip, then he'll shut me up, and then Grant will be very happy, and
What's funny
they
is,
can ride off in the sunset.
especially if we want to go back to Palmer and Rogers, if those guys both give you 12 goals and Joao Pedro ends up with 10 goals, but he's getting these guys involved, similar to, not that Joao Pedro's bad at it, but the way Nicholas Jackson just opens up space for everybody else. If he plays a crucial part in doing so and he ends up with 10 goals, 6 assists, and contributes in the cups, so what? I'd be happy. It really just depends on how the rest of the attack plays out. I think you can make an argument that whether it's Enzo Fernández or a potential new signing in the midfield, that guy next to Caicedo, we're going to have our eyes on him. We can talk about Reece James. I don't know if he's going to be playing midfield, center back, full back, in possession. You can make the argument Lacroix, Colwell. I think
who's the
Robert
one-
Sanchez.
Who's the one
we can
guy
have this
for
talk
you
all day.
outside? Like, if you had to pencil in one dude today that you're like, my expectations of them need to be either a leap or they need to stay at where they were last season, which is probably not anybody, but like need to take a leap for Chelsea to become the best version of themselves. Who is the one guy for you?
Personally, I would end up saying Cole Palmer just because of the standard that I hold him to and expect from him. So far off it. Yeah, he ended up with like 11 goals, but again, whether it was injury, not being able to get back up to speed, nowhere near what he is capable of. The magic that he can produce out of nothing. So, you got your buddy in. We've got seemingly a good manager at the helm. It looks like you're being set up for success now. Not much is going against you as it stands. So, I'd love to see him get back to those levels because if he is up to those levels and the floor has been raised in the back line, we can make movies.
So I guess the last thing for Cole Palmer then is it strictly down to like an Mbumo situation where it's like goals and assists will dictate what it is, or is it just the general play and him looking healthy and him playing just well?
Yeah, goals and assists, even when he had his breakout season, I wasn't really judging him on that. Obviously, the numbers are great. It really helps an argument and all that. But for me, it is more so the eye test and what he is
Overall
creating.
involvement in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not one to really hide to begin with, but just the impact, create big chances, put the ball on a plate for a guy like Rogers, draw Pedro, and others. I think that's more so how I'll impact him. I'm not expecting goals and assists every game. Obviously, we want that.
Yeah.
But if the impact is there without goals and assists and we're winning games comfortably and he's playing a huge factor in that, by all means, I'll be happy.
I feel like you just want him dictating the play.
Yeah.
Whether he's getting the goals or assists or playing the hockey pass and getting the assist to the assist, then it doesn't matter. But I think one thing we criticized him a bit last season towards the end was his lack of willingness to go check in for balls. I feel like you want him, your superstar, to be the one demanding the ball at the most, especially when games are getting tough and tight. Like you're gonna want him to come and get the ball, receive, and be able to platform the other guys forward. So I definitely, just as a Palmer fan, like I would like to see that going forward. But yeah,
Yeah, I just think the last thing to really wrap up the whole Chelsea topic is in that regard, whether it's Palmer or a lot of other attacking players, really anybody so far preseason wise, I think he's profiling these guys very well. I think they're being platformed very well because, again, like I was touching on, whether it's a 3-back, whether it's a 4-back, you typically have that 3-4-3 shape, box midfield. You have players holding width, you have players in the half spaces, and I think the right players are in the right spots. It's just about figuring out that defensive balance. And again, for most of the preseason, there's a guy in that back line that doesn't belong in the first team. So it's a harder thing to judge. We haven't seen Lacroix and Colwell play yet. It's a lot of Tosin. It's a lot of Fofana being the marquee defender, if you will. And we know that story. Let's stop now before I continue to ramble on those guys.
Yeah, Chelsea, as always, keep us on our toes.